Hey guys, welcome back to the Mental Mobility Podcast. This is Pete. We are here at episode number 121. We have a guest for you. I kind of plugged her in a couple weeks ago, so you guys are familiar with her. If you haven't followed her, definitely follow her. I just met her. This is the first time actually seeing her face, like face to face. Before we just talked on the phone. I was outside of my daughter's dance class, and we just connected then. And the story she told me is going to change your life. And at the same time, hopefully it impacts yours and or others, because that's why we're here. That's why we're doing it. And it's a very, very heartfelt story. I'm going to let her do a lot of it, obviously. But for me, I could listen to it like all day, because there's so much more that we don't know about for people that are going through mental health issues, and or even more importantly, like the people they are surrounded by. So as myself, when I was going through my struggle, I never really realized how much the people around us were being affected. Not that it's a problem, but we never think about it that way, especially when we're stuck in our own circle. So it's a cool perspective to listen to. And would you love to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Nubia Kazada, and wow, it's been quite the journey for me. Even just within the last year, talking about mental health and just how you were expressing, I actually started to get a little emotional a little bit because you're right. It's the we don't people don't really understand or realize how much the family is affected, right? We we are there to support and love, and but when there's that blockage, you're not in a position to receive it, right? And that's something, and I'm sure something you can relate with. You probably did have people trying to support you and try to get you going, but you were just kind of like that tunnel vision, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just so many stories that people still don't understand. And one thing, luckily through my healing, I had a couple people actually uh, tell me that you weren't there. Try to actually make it my fault.
Right.
And but they don't understand, right? They
Right.
don't. So for me, I actually hold compassion for people who are in that space because they're also hurt, right? And they
Right.
don't understand. And I have to see things from a different lens, and I hold a different type of understanding and a different perspective. But it's definitely it was definitely hard, but it had to happen that way.
Right.
There's nothing that I could have done to change anything. My level of support and love was always what I thought was best at the time, right?
Right.
And it all turned out for a greater purpose
Right.
because right now I'm talking where my brother's not here no more, right? So, but there is, as we go in our conversation, there is something more beyond our own comprehension at the time when we suffer loss or someone we care about so much is no longer with us. And I have learned a lot since my brother's passing,
Right.
and currently, which I feel blessed, is that he's with me. He's with me
Right.
constantly, and he made his journey to the other side, so he can guide me in being a place where I'm at. And it's honestly beautiful. I can say that wholeheartedly that my relationship that I have with my brother is actually better than what it was when he was alive, especially those last 15 years. And it's actually incredible. He's himself, the person that he wanted to be in the
Right.
spirit world, and it's beautiful to be so connected to him now.
Right. It's
Mhm.
interesting because I kind of think back to when we talked on the phone, and you were explaining the situation. I think the viewers here, if you can,
Mhm.
please just like explain probably your brother's side, because it's easy for us to look at our side. And
Mhm.
as a person that
Yeah,
was myself was in that tunnel, right? I
yeah,
kind of did care about
yeah.
everything. And I'm so grateful that everyone like talked to me and
Mhm.
tried to help me or go for walks with me. but like in
Mhm.
my mind, it was just a little different. It just was, I guess,
Mhm.
um, absorbed a little differently.
Mhm.
Could you talk
Yeah.
about your brother like a
Yeah,
little bit?
absolutely. So, we're not born, right, with a mental illness per se, right? And we're all born these such beautiful human beings, so innocent. And it's through our journey and the things that we experience that can change the way we look at things. And especially when you're young, and in my brother's case, it all started with being sexually molested by my father's like best friend at the time, right? And when you're young, especially being a boy, which I feel it's boys, because they're trying to be, strong, or
Right.
not say anything because you don't want anyone to know, or right. And for him, all that, I would say probably like a good maybe 8 years before he even said anything. And then when
Mm.
he did want to express what happened to him culturally, um, it was if they didn't want to like accept what happened, but also it's almost like it was in the past, it's not right, this is not what's happening now, let's kind of like get over it in a way, right?
Right.
But I don't think that, I mean, my parents have never experienced these kind of things in the past before, so it was just kind of putting it to the side. And then I'm sure they, well, if we don't talk about it, maybe he'll just forget about it,
Right.
right? So that was the first experience. And so as a young boy, and I feel like this is actually very common, especially in our generations growing up in the 80s and 90s,
Yep.
you know, boys don't cry,
Hmm.
suck it up, all that kind of stuff, right? And I think that's exactly like what happened, right? You try to hide and suck it up, right? But when you experience something so young and you're told, don't say anything, this is between me and you,
Yeah.
right? And it happens again, or presents itself again later on, which it did. And it happened with um, my brother's hockey coaches at the time.
Oh.
Yeah. And the same thing, right? It already happened to you once. So
Right.
it's like you freeze, right? And I'm only and I say it's not that I was there with him, but I've also had experiences like that as well. Um, and so I know what it's like when you're in a position where it's like you lost your voice,
Right.
right? And so as you got older, and this is where around 20 years old, when like kind of like right after high school is when you start going out, you're partying, you're hanging out with your friends, but all of that was just kind of like masking, right?
Right.
Masking what was truly hurting inside. And once he all of his friends starting getting girlfriends and jobs, like more like a stable job,
Right.
he was finding himself where he couldn't keep up, right? And once everyone else is doing their thing, that's when you're alone in your thoughts,
Yeah.
right? And you don't want to go out, you don't want to do anything. And I remember in the beginning stages of even his own healing, he actually wanted spiritually, he was so desperate to heal that
Right.
so he did a lot of work. Actually, he became a Reiki master. He loved meditation,
Right.
and he actually wanted to become a shaman. He
Well,
really
that's great.
wanted to transform his life. And but this is the thing, and this is where even for what I do, I'm trying to like tap in. I'm not sure where and what the position that I'm in, how am I go about with the spirituality side of things, because
Mhm.
from my experience and what I know is that when you're in a space where you're weak and vulnerable, there are evil entities that
Demons.
know
Man.
the demons, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when you're trying and you're 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 trying to make right for everyone else. Like you want to be the helper, you want to be the giver, you want to be the one that wants to help because you know what it feels like to be hurt,
Yeah.
right? But when you're doing it out of place of almost this inner shame and unworthiness, but you're trying to find it and give it to others, right? It's not coming from like that honest, true self of healing, right?
Right.
There's still pain lingering inside. So for instance, him becoming wanting to become a shaman, like during that process, it was excuse me, it was it was hard for him because he couldn't let go of that past. It was still so deep inside him. And when he kind of got kind of like a no, he needed to do the work. It was just nothing is going right in my life, even if I'm
Right.
trying, in pursuing this path. And
Hmm.
I remember he went pretty deep and in terms of allowing the negativity to enter his being and listening to that inner negative voice where it actually starts to take over, right? You're in this loophole, right? And so later on, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and
Okay.
schizoactive disorder, which is a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar.
Right.
But during that happened like later on. I do believe with early intervention, which at the time we didn't really know. We never experienced like mental illness,
Right.
right? And it's not something that runs in our family. So we didn't know how to address it, whether it was like through therapy or doing some sort of holistic healing early on when he was trying to express what had happened to him. If
Okay.
he was cared for, I do believe, and understood better, I do feel like things would have been different.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that, and it's tough because if you're in a place where in our in our instance is if if your own family, your own mom and dad is not, it can't be that support for you, you're expected to go somewhere else and have strangers listen to you,
Right.
right? So there you
Right.
feel lost in between. And there was definitely a lot of pain, but I can definitely say the also the medication was
Mm.
because
Hmm.
there's no cure, right? Because if you were to actually do any type of brain scan, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a person who has like mental illness or mental health, right? There's nothing they can see scientifically through brain scans or anything in the body. Um, there's definitely some going to be some hormonal imbalance through like blood work when you check it, but a brain is a healthy looking brain,
Right.
right? So during the beginning process of the trial and error of medication, that really actually messed them up way more than anything else because that chemical imbalance and trying to test what certain drugs were going to do, like he went from literally being like a zombie at one point where I remember when they gave him certain drugs, like it was so hard to watch,
Right.
where he's just staring blankly,
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay, this is not it. And later on, he ended up getting this type of drug where it's like injections, and that seemed to help. But the 8 years at the time of just trial and error of medication and doing this and doing that, and
Yep.
you know my brother went through a lot of trauma going in and out of the hospital, like feeling scared,
Yeah.
being, like they're going to. you can only imagine if you're going to be restrained, you're going to
Yeah.
act out of rage and being forced. And so it was that part of the journey was really hard to witness, and especially at the time, not knowing really what to do.
Right.
Um,
Right.
is it's tough. But now I see things in a totally different lens because I knew being a spiritual being and knowing that my brother did lead that path towards the end. I remember it was like about 2 months before he passed. He he looked at me and I remember he was crying and he's like, I can't do this anymore. He's
Yeah.
like, I've tried to hold on for so long. And it's like at that point he wasn't holding on for himself. He was trying to hold on for us, right?
Right.
And I remember for the very first time, I didn't actually try to save him. I was actually listening
Right.
and having this sense of compassion. And I'm like, I'm not going to call, the police to come get him to try to save him and go through that torture all over again.
Yeah.
And I just felt in that moment it wasn't my right. It wasn't my place to do that. And I was just listening to him, and they didn't want to cause that type of trauma again because it was just over. It's like another repeated cycle all over again. And I remember looking at him, and I just felt like there's nothing in that moment that I could have done other than just be there and hold him
Hmm.
and just wipe his tears down, right? And it was tough.
Yeah.
And sharing like, one of our like that last meal he loved, pizza and wings. And I remember that. As bring gets me all a little emotional now.
Yeah. It's
But after that, then it was like about it was tough because there'd be days where he wouldn't eat. I have to buy him, groceries, um, make sure he was fed. It was a lot, and it's something that towards the last 2 years, I think of his life that even my parents, it was so hard for them. Like they would want to know through me, like, did he eat today? Did you buy him the groceries? They didn't. It was a lot for my parents to handle too, and
sure.
so that last, so I remember the week of, I remember him. He called me, and I was cooking for the kids, and it was like, yeah, in the afternoon, and I pick up the phone. I didn't want to not pick up the phone, but so I picked up the phone and just like a normal day, right? And he wanted to talk, and he did seem a little. Now that I look back, he did seem a little bit quieter. Just wanted to have a conversation. But I was in that moment of, cooking and the kids are there and I'm like, oh man, it's like not the right time. I'm like, listen, like, just I'll call you back. I'm a little busy right now. I'll call you back.
Okay.
And I never did. I never called him back.
Hmm.
And the last thing I hear is just getting that phone call on September 11th, 2022. So you can only imagine the all the thoughts of like, maybe I could have done something. Maybe I could have stopped
Right.
it. Maybe if I just had that one last conversation with him, like maybe I could have saved him, right? And through my healing journey, I realized that no matter what, there's nothing I could have done to save him. That was his way, and there's a lot of things that he did symbolically because he wanted to be closer to God. He's like, I need to go to the light because he was just so aware of the spiritual realm and being so connected to God. It was the way he died was my in my heart was an act of surrender.
Right.
It was that this is it for me. I need to move to the other side.
Right.
And there's a whole beautiful story that leads that comes right after because what he did was the same thing that his brother did for him. And I'll share that story. And this is the one I shared with you,
Right.
Pete. And so the day of his funeral, I I remember just looking at him, and he was just laying there. He looked so beautiful, and I just looked at him and I told him that I loved him, but I wasn't going to be waiting. I asked him to give me a sign that he made it to the other side. I needed to know. And because of, my how I was raised, and I was raised Catholic, right? So in the form that how he left, right? It's like there's something in me. I'm like, there's no way that God would not accept my brother. Like, he's his child. Like, there's no way. And when I asked for the sign, that was it. Like, I knew it was coming. There was no, I wasn't having an expectation as to when it was going to come or nothing. That was my moment of surrender. And once when I asked him for the sign the next day, when I came back to gather his belongings after the mass service, the embalmer, one of the embalmers and like the assistants that was there, she kind of just sat beside me, and I just said out loud that I'm just waiting for a sign from my brother. And she looks at me and she starts getting all teary eyed, and she kind of caught me off guard. And she asked me if I was spiritual. And
Hmm.
yeah, so I said, yes, absolutely. And so she goes on by saying, I don't normally do this because you just don't know how families are going to react, especially with what had just happened, right? But she said, I feel like this is something that you can receive, she said. And she's like, I have something for you. So she goes to the office, and she comes back and she brings like a note. And oh my God, in my head, I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, he wrote a letter. Like, he wrote us a letter.
Right.
And so I go on and read it, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And how it was articulated, like it showed like the sadness, the suffering, all the pain and the darkness, but also this peace and calm and happiness, and like that transition kind of into the light. And the way it was written, I'm like, this is my brother. Like,
Yeah.
where did you get this? It was just the words and the style. Because my brother loved to journal and write and do poetry. It was exact as if I was reading my brother's like writing. And
Right.
so she said, I believe wholeheartedly that your brother came to someone I know. And my heart kind of just sank. I'm like, I need to know more. Like, who is this person? She couldn't really explain exactly. So I asked her just to give me his contact information, and we connected. And then he goes
Okay.
on by sharing his story. And so it was like a week later, I was able to connect to the guy, and it's actually incredible. I actually still connect with him.
Hmm.
And
That's cool.
yeah, because I'll share in a moment, but so he said that for starters, like Jennifer, the embalmer, had been doing that type of work for I think over a decade, and she's never experienced this type of energetic force when getting someone ready for their family. And she's like, this was just so strong that finished work, and she had to express and share it with somebody, because usually with that type of work, it's not that you're gonna, so how was your day? Right?
Right.
It's just not
Right.
one of those things that
It wasn't a normal day.
you just kind of like just leave it at work type thing. But she had to share, and she shared it with her friend. And that's where that connection was bridged. So then when he goes on by sharing his story, he said, it was just a normal night. I was just watching TV, and my kids were sleeping, and all of a sudden, like, the door opens, and he didn't think anything of it. He just gets up, closes the door, goes back to watching the TV. And he said within like a couple minutes later, the door opens again. And then he's like, at that point, he's like, maybe it's the kids or something. So he gets up, opens the door. The kids are not there. He goes, checks on, goes to their bedroom. They're sleeping. He's like, that's odd. So he comes back, he shuts the door, he makes sure that it's shut. And then he goes back to watching TV again. And he ends up falling asleep. And then he said around 3:34 in the morning is when he wakes up. And when he wakes up, seconds later, the door opens again. He's like, at that point, he's like, okay, something or someone is trying to get my attention. He said he didn't feel scared or anything like that, but
Right.
that curiosity kind of like started building up. And he's like, so he got up, he went to the door, he opened the door, like kind of like a little kid like, opening the door a little fast and turns on the lights. And he says that he saw this tall like shadow. It was like a person,
Hmm.
and that kind of just catches you off guard a little bit. And then he sees the shadow walk toward like
Oh,
move towards his room. And he said that he just ended up taking a step back to kind of allow this presence. And he said he didn't feel scared. And as soon as he allowed the presence, you can feel that energy, that's this
right.
spirit that's there. And he said as soon as he allowed that presence in, it's as if like his whole body went through like this shift, like this like almost like this electrical feeling. And once he felt that, he had these urge to write. And it was like you're at that time he didn't know it was my brother. He was like it's like this person was just sharing just so much, and I was feeling it was the feeling of the how it felt to be in a dark place, to suffer and the pain. But then it kind of turned into that happiness, calm, and peace.
Right.
And that's exactly how he wrote. And then as soon as he was done writing, that's when he closed his eyes.
Hmm.
And he closed his eyes, and he said, "That's when I saw your brother." And
Um,
then he's like, "But this is the part that I didn't understand. I saw your brother with another man that looked exactly like him, and they were walking towards this like big bright light, and it's as if they were twins."
hmm.
And that's when my heart sank, because my brother was a twin. And
No, no.
nobody would have known that. My mom
Right.
was actually listening on the phone, and she just like pale, and she just, oh my gosh, like my son reunited with his brother. My mom lost my brother's twin when she was pregnant. So my brother, essentially, my brother's brother, um, was waiting for him.
Right.
And they were
Hmm.
walking together towards that light. And then so earlier on, it's I kind of mentioned that this is what he did essentially for me, because my brother knew the journey that I was leading. And he being in this space, I understand now that he's guiding me. He's guiding me, and he has already told me several times that transitioning was now his way of helping from the spiritual realm, and connecting with my brother. And imagine experiencing that first sign when I asked for it, and him delivering literally the next day. I
Right.
thought that was it for me. Like thank you, like it's amazing. Like I couldn't. I think I couldn't have asked for anything else, kind of thing. But it didn't end there. It
Right.
was constant.
Yeah.
It was He was always present through so many different signs, so many different ways, and how he presents himself. And I have like hundreds of stories, but it's just beautiful to see this connection that we have with our loved ones in spirit. Like, even though he left the way he left, like everything still has a greater purpose if we
Right.
allow ourselves to be open and not to dwell and be angry and hold guilt and resentment and all that. And those are the things that are weighing us down so heavily that it doesn't allow us to see the potential and the possibilities that are actually waiting for you.
Right.
So it was in that journey, it caught everything kind of caught me off guard because I was grieving. My brother just died. And here I am talking to him after, like, when he's in the spirit world and he's connecting
Right.
with me. He was wanting to make, and in the beginning, it was like it was so much because he wanted to be like to really tell me that he used to call me Nube. He's like, Nube, I'm here. So going through all those experiences, I couldn't kind of like turn my back on it. It was, I knew that something greater was to come from it,
Right.
and I dove into a deeper spiritual practice myself, because if I'm going to do this, I need to heal myself, reconnect with myself, so I can connect greater, not only with my brother, but with this higher force, right?
Right.
And but during that time, I remember it was like 2 months after getting all these. I was like on cloud nine. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
it was like through dreams and signs and through music, and it was like numerology, and like all these things were just like all the time. And um, even through like a wasp. Oh my gosh, I have a crazy story with that as well. But and during that time, what started getting me into this even more is because about a week and almost 2 weeks late after my brother, my best friend's friend, who was our age, oh, I was 36, he had a heart attack.
Hmm.
And they found him in bed, and he was there for for a while, unfortunately. And so I remember the very first time I got like the signs, I I just kind of like put it out there. And I've learned that when you do speak to spirit, and it's you, they don't like read, your mind. So
Right.
it's through your voice. And I just like I worked with my brother. I just want to know if it actually works if I call on a specific person, I mean, spirit at that time.
Right.
So I just asked, I'm like, and his name was Sergio at the time. And I just asked Sergio, I just want to know for my friend's sake, like she was also having a hard time. And because I had this experience, she's like, well, maybe, I want to know if Sergio made it, right?
Right.
So I asked them, I'm like, in any way that you want to send me, whether it's through dreams, sign, anything, like I'm open, and obviously no pressure, kind of thing. And that was it. And then that night, I remember I was having a kind of like that moment, remembering, like I was looking at old pictures of my brother and when we were kids, and it was like, oh, it was hard because only at that point it was like not even 2 weeks later. And I remember going to bed, and I was trying to recollect myself, and I ended up falling asleep.
Hmm.
And around five, yeah, I remember at 5 in the morning, I woke up, and I just went to the bathroom, came back, and during that time, I went through a very deep, like lucid dream where it was like how I am living, like how I am right now. It was just so real. And I remember I was in the back seat of a car, and the person in front of me, kind of like almost like an Uber, was taking me somewhere, and it was kind of like country roadish, but when we got there, it was there was a bunch of buildings. And then when we parked, uh the driver, he just kind of like did one of these, like turned around to
Mm-hmm.
like look back, and it was Sergio.
What?
It
What?
was
Wait, what?
Yeah, so remember the day
Yeah.
before I asked
Yeah.
him to give me a sign, like anyway. So he came in my
Oh
dreams.
my goodness.
So he was like so glowing and just smiling. And he was a mechanic. So he was driving like this really nice
Uh,
car. So I was like, everything just made sense. I'm like, oh my gosh. And in my head, that this is exactly my response. I'm like, Sergio, like you came, like this is
right.
incredible, right? So I remember jumping off my seats, I was hugging him, and then I just sat back, and then
uh,
when I sat back, I saw my brother, and it was like his 12-year-old self, and he was just
oh,
smiling because I was looking at our pictures when we were kids. So he came to me that way, and
hmm,
he was just so happy, just glowing, and I remember he was waving. It was just so beautiful. And then through that moment, when you have spirit connections, and even through my experiences,
yeah.
it's like, have you ever actually woken up from a dream where you're like your breath is being taken away?
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's actually our spirit coming back into our body,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I have that very often, but now, I've been able to train myself to do a little.
Okay.
I don't do astral projection often.
Right.
I've only done it a couple times, but um, it's it was just so beautiful. Like, and I remember just having tears in my eyes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you
Hmm.
both for visiting me all in
You're in
once.
one at
And
once.
then, yeah, I called my friend. It was just, and I told her the experience, and she was like, you know, so happy that I was able to do that for her.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what to expect even moving forward. But I know now that after over a year going through many different experiences, and I've um, I've learned many things. And sorry, going back, and because there's so many stories, but going back during that time that I was receiving so many connections with him, it was just one day where it just stopped,
Right.
and I had no idea. Like, well, okay, maybe not today, tomorrow, and then nothing, and it was like a week.
Hmm.
And I started to build like this anger and resentment again. I was like, how can you do this to me? Like, you come, you're with me all the time, and all of a sudden you're not here. Like, I was
Yeah.
starting to get angry, and as if I was losing him all over again. I'm like,
Right.
don't do this to me, right? It's like I was holding on to something
Right.
so strongly. And then, but what my brother was
Oh,
trying to
excuse me.
teach me at the time was the attachment, right?
Right.
When we hold attachments, there we're there's part of us that still is hurt,
Yes.
right? Because if anything in your life, if something in your life currently right now that is removed from your life,
Hmm.
and you feel this like negative emotion, then there's something there that needs to be healed and mended. Like,
Right.
in this something we don't have that awareness until something it is taken away,
Right.
right? Um, and but during that process, I think it was about a month in, and I actually started making myself sick.
Oh shit.
Like, it was like I wasn't thinking properly. I was like the brain fog, headaches. I was losing weight. I was just not myself. And
Right.
what really threw me off was I started to get skin rashes.
Hmm.
So it's that in itself tells
Yeah.
me how powerful our mind really is, and how our thoughts can make us sick, disease,
100%. Yes.
illness, autoimmune, all these things, right? And it was incredible. I had this shift, and it was like a literally my life turned like literally a whole 360. I'm like, there's no way that I'm doing this to myself. I like at that point, I'm like, Justin, you're watching me right now, like
Hmm.
literally destroying myself. I'm like, no, I'm done. Like, I literally
Right.
got up. I'm like, enough. Like,
Right.
enough. And it was like, again, I went back into like my spiritual practices, just leading with just full, like just gratitude. And
Right.
even on the hard days, even on the days where it's
Hmm.
hard, still showing gratitude and just even in moments where I'm like, I don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. But right now it's like I need to cry. I need to let go. I need to feel. And I know it's going to get better, but right now I've learned not to suppress. I've learned to release. I've learned to be vulnerable. I've learned to let go. I've learned to really own who I am. And I think that's our true mission in life is to master ourselves. Because when we can do that, we're in a whole different space where we just have this positive, this energetic vibe that we attract what we are, right? And
100%.
it was so that alone taught me such a beautiful lesson, and my life just changed after that. And now being more aware, not being, and just even sharing this story publicly
Right.
was literally on his 1 year anniversary.
Okay.
And after that day, it was literally that evening, and I literally heard my brother said, "Finally." He's like, and it's like, finally, right? And because that opened up so many doors because I had a lot of people share their stories because I feel we've all had stories like this in one way, shape, or form where people think a coincidence or
Right.
this feeling or could it be or maybe not. It's because we're not trusting in
Right.
ourselves, right? There's
Weird.
something, right?
Weird.
And it's like, no, there's no way. But I've had a lot of experiences when I was younger,
Yes.
and you try to express these to my parents, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, say, pray on all Father, Hail
Yeah.
Mary. They'd
Yeah.
be like, what? And I
Go
was like,
back
holy
there.
water. But I actually remember vividly when my grandmother came to visit me too. I was like very, very, very aware, and I knew that it was her. I smelled her. She hugged me, and it was beautiful. And I remember sharing that, and it was like, I was dreaming, but it wasn't a dream. Like I felt it, and many experiences, even yeah, lots of experiences when I was a kid, even with my brother, and it just shows that especially children
Right.
when we're young, and it's usually like until like 7 years old, they say where children are in that growth and they're absorbing everything. It's like when they're learning the most, and right. And it's the same way with spirit, right? That's why it's so easy to connect with spirit. So if you ever watch that movie, The Sixth Sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's literally,
It's
I mean, some people can see, but I've never seen.
right.
But it's kind of the same way, right?
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah.
it's this knowing. And if you've ever had an imaginary friend, like it wasn't
Hmm.
imaginary,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
this connection. And my brother has come to my kids too, and I see it. I'm seeing it. I'm like, this is incredible. I've seen my son have a conversation with him, and just know of his presence. And my daughter playing hide and seek with my brother. And this was like
Right.
2 weeks after or 3 weeks after he had passed. And it's just incredible. Like, and I feel that's what we're kind of striving for in life, really, is to create that stillness, and that we're not worrying or bringing the past with us, like this huge luggage of weight with us,
Right.
right? And
Cargo.
it's right? And then we're not worrying about the future.
Right.
And it's the past and the future is what's holding us literally captive and like in this cell where we're actually not even living.
Right.
We're not living at all.
No.
And it's incredible once you can let go of those two and just be present. Oh wow, it's just incredible. Such an incredible feeling, and your mind and your being and just your essence just changes. You're in a whole different just way of life is just so different. Like, I can humbly say that I'm not afraid to die or anything like that. Like I know that there's this knowing that I'm here right now, and every day that I wake up, my purpose there. Like there's still something greater to achieve, right? We all have that. We all have this purpose. And the more we tap into who we are individually,
Right.
we get to inspire others to collectively, we're doing the same, right? And by that, we are actually lifting each other. And we're doing this for like, kind of like humanity, right? Because we're all in some one way or another, we're hiding, we're wearing a lot of masks, right? And it's being your who you truly are, not being afraid to share it. And this part of me, it was tough to share. I mean, I was, you know, go to work, and I loved I was always been someone who was driven and always had a positive, optimistic outlook on life. But to come out and be like, okay, I now connect with spirit.
Right.
I My life is totally different, and now I'm actually helping others to do the same. And
Right.
when you're living life with just kind of trekking on, but this holding on to this, again, this pain that it's just there, and it's always going to be there. It's like, and that's what makes people sick when, when it comes to like any sorts of types of diseases, where even in health and fitness, right? You know, that alone, which I've also seen, is, you eat well, you go to the gym, you look great,
Hmm.
but they're suffering inside. They're
Right.
suffering so much inside. And then that avoidance in tapping into their spiritual essence, where they're not nurturing, is what's like literally killing them. Like this,
Right.
when you're feeling that type of pain, it's your soul literally telling you, take care of me.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
make time, make space for me. Like, I'm here
Right.
for you. Just try to let go. Like, let's do this together.
Right.
Right. And it's in that letting go and of expectations and all those things, we free ourselves from so much. It's truly liberating, and but it does require work. It requires practice,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's just like anything
Absolutely.
else, right? You're not going to just
Absolutely.
be good at something. It's and the same thing with meditation. It's most people, it's very uncomfortable. It's like you're
Right.
sitting there, you listen to the music, and it's like, you're thinking about so many different things, and it's like right away you think this is not for me. The same thing when someone's going to try the gym for the first time. I've being in the health and fitness and being a coach and personal trainer and CrossFit coach, is you see it all the time. People would come to the door,
Yep.
not even walk in, and leave. And they'll do that for like maybe a month, until one day the courage
Right.
to walk in, and it's like, okay, treadmill. Let me
Right.
be on the treadmill
Right.
for a
Right.
month, and then maybe I'll start doing some strength training. But imagine the process, right? It's a journey, right? And if we were just taking it day by day, you'll see the little increments. It just starts piling on, and then you do change. And I do believe people can change. They just have to want it
Right.
enough and see beyond what they're seeing in that moment, right?
Right.
Because we all have the potential to do amazing things, right?
100%. And it's like you said it, so many people focus, and it's great, right? It's a long journey. It's anything is better than nothing, but we focus so much on our physical being, physical. How do I look? How do I feel? I want to live long, so I take care of my physical self. But they forget that your mental self and your spiritual self is so much, I want to say, so much more important than just your physical being,
Mhm.
because you could always change that, like
Mhm. Mhm.
through food, right, and exercise. But like here it takes a lot of work. Like it's a lot of believing first, which is the
Yeah.
hardest part, right? When you tell these stories,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's 1,000 people that are like, that doesn't sound real at all. It's like, no,
Yeah.
a lot of people are different. Some people are gifted as yourself, right? You do see things, you do feel things, you do feel and see extra, you
But
know?
we all have this gift, though.
We
We
do.
do.
Other people just block it because it's
Mhm.
I'm weird now, or I'm
Yeah.
crazy to think
Yeah.
that way, you know? So great. Thank you for that. 'Cause that's
Yeah, no, and the thing is for people who are actually wondering, well, why is that even the case? It's like we are programmed, like
right.
90%.
Right.
If anyone knows Joe Dispenza,
Right.
I love using this line because
Right.
imagine if 90% of who we are is programmed. Aren't you curious to know who you really are?
Right.
Right?
You're right.
Imagine like if you're this 10%. And what's incredible to me is like this 10% that you have is what kind of keeps you going. Like there's this sense of like, I'm doing this and I don't feel like 100% that this is what I want to do or what feels right for me, but you do it anyways. Because again, anywhere along the lines, we're not even pressured. You feel like you need to go this direction, but your heart is not pulling you there, but you go because that's what you feel that you think you need to go. But then there's something that's kind of always pulling you back a little bit. And that's where that unhappiness comes in because we are not nurturing that side that is needing, it's literally screaming for help.
Right.
So if 90% of our thoughts, the things that we do, our habits, even how we speak,
Hmm.
right? It's all been we were trained and taught, right? And that can be like, what
Everything.
school did you go to? Who were the kids that you were hanging around with when you were? What
Hmm.
did you see, right?
Right. What did you
What
see?
what did you see,
Yeah.
right? Like it's man, like the being a 5-year-old growing up in the 90s, between 5 and like I would say 13, like that's a huge chunk. Where I mean, guys, and I say 5 is usually when really kids can kind of go back and really remember like
Right.
certain things, right? Not everything, but you remember the things that left an emotional imprint, something that made you
Right.
feel something, right? So
Right.
that's why when you get older and certain things may happen or you see something, you don't even know why, but there's this emotion that kind of comes up and you're like, where did that come from?
Right.
But it kind of trickles down to your first initial experience when you were maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years old or whatever, you had this emotional response that now is being kind of like triggered, if you will, by something else that you're experiencing right now. Right. So when you start to go back and forth, that's why this process of healing can be very hard for people and don't want to go dive in too deep because it's like when you have this like look and it'd be like, oh my gosh, my entire life is almost a lie,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you go through this like
Is it your
bit of a
life?
mind F, if you will,
Yeah.
and it's like, holy, now you're telling me that I can actually choose like how I want to live, how I want to be, how I want to act, how I want to
Right.
talk, it's like you become this creator.
Right.
And once you really embody that, it's when really things change. You just it's an incredible journey, and anyone even listening to take on that work, it's and if wondering where do we even start,
Right.
it's really just declaring that this is what you want. Because if you're not declaring that you want to recreate yourself and be your best self and be this human being that can actually create impact,
Right.
right? It's as soon as you declare, then there's nothing that's going to stop you from getting in the way, even if we go through some road bumps, even if we're going to be, because challenges are going to come, right, through this journey, and it's preparing yourself for that and knowing that okay, now in my life when things happen, I don't dwell on it. I don't think I just okay, this is happening for a reason. It's either a lesson. I'm going to grow from it, and and that's it. That's how I think of it, right? It's not over analyzing, it's not why me, it's not
No.
why this or that. It's just, okay, this is supposed to happen this way. I'm not
Right.
gonna fight it,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And and then yeah, it's this journey of life becomes this um I love being in the unknown, right? It's
Right.
just you're actually living, right? You're not thinking so much that you're so like again this tunnel vision where you actually can now look around and make eye contact maybe with somebody, or if see something that you would have never have seen if you were just so focused on, getting to work or going where you need to be, or just thinking about, like, what happened 2 years ago, or
Right.
it's just, you become more open. You start to invite new possibilities, new opportunities, new views, you start to see things differently, and the people around you, it's honestly amazing. Once you get to that place, it's like you're in this beautiful kind of, you don't see all the things that are happening around the world, and it's not to negate what's happening, but if in that moment, what can you do, right? Like, y dwelling on things that you have no control of,
Right.
it doesn't serve anybody, and of
Nope.
course not yourself. And yeah, it's an incredible experience, and I'm 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 honored that my brother, allowed me to, not even allowed me, that brother just kind of shine that extra light on me to pursue this and
Right.
to help others as well, because people who are experiencing these things, or have maybe even the past, and they just don't know, and it's one of those things that just sticks with them. And then when you hear, and that's why when I shared my story, it kind of like ignited something that
Right.
happened to somebody. And it's like, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I
Right.
experienced that. I knew I felt that. And right, so all these things started to come up, and it's, you start to trust, right? Because that's, I think, the biggest goal too, is is trusting who we are, and trusting what our body is telling us,
Right.
right? And just being able to listen, because I think we've all experienced too when we were younger. How many times did your body and your gut, it told you, don't do it,
Right.
Pete,
Right.
right? But you
Mm,
still do it.
still did it.
Still did it, right? Or, and again, same thing where it says, "Do it, go for it," and then you don't, right? And it's,
That's
but as we
worse.
learn, it
That's the
comes
worst.
with
That's worse.
oh gosh, no, I know, right? It's just, and that's just it, right? It's this fear, but what are we really fearing, right? What are we truly scared,
Right.
right, about? And if it's failure, man, fail as many times as you need to,
Right.
right? You're gonna keep growing. You're gonna learn something every time.
Yep.
And every time you do fail, and whatever it is that you learn, imagine the accumulation of all the things that you've learned. It's like
Right.
that one time that you actually decided to try again, and then you make it.
Right. That's it.
That's cool. That's
That's
cool,
cool. That's
right?
cool. That's the feeling, right? That's what
Mhm.
you work for. And it's funny you say that because um even more presently for myself, right? It just connects. Your story connected once again. I was getting super overwhelmed with just like, we're in a new city. We just moved here pretty much 2 years ago. So still trying to figure her
Mhm.
out. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do this, do that. Like I came from New Jersey, owning my own business for 15 years, and now I'm here doing
Mhm.
whatever I have to do to do
Mhm.
things. And it's the overthinking got to me,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
being in the future, right? Living
Mhm.
in the past. But
Mhm.
what I was forgetting was just being grateful that I got 2 feet to step on, And once I started doing that, even if someone is bugging me, I say, thank you for that person that's bugging me. Or I really want to say other words. I'm trying to be clean. Bugging me. But like they're teaching me a lesson on patience. So
Absolutely.
thank you for the
Mhm.
patience to deal with it. And the days are so just putting it like 2 weeks ago, because I
Mhm.
was going backwards. I was like, man, it just made such a difference. And you said it before, and just even now, taking it day to day and staying in the present is
Absolutely.
that's it.
I love what you said about, when certain people come in your life, they're
Yeah.
like testing you, right? And
Yes.
it exactly is it. It's being in a space where, if something is would normally get you upset or triggered, or just like, oh,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
now you're actually switching it, and now you're controlling the situation,
Right.
right?
Right. Because I control
And
how I feel. I cannot
yeah,
control them, and that's up to
exactly.
them. So,
Exactly, and it's just amazing that, that you're able to do that, because you start to see the magic in it, right? When things actually start to shift and things start to actually work out, because what your thoughts and how you speak and all those, like, whether it's something even negative, you're actually attracting all that into your life.
Right.
So if you're getting pissed off
Right.
at somebody, guess who's gonna be there like 2 blocks down the road? Someone else is gonna piss you off,
Yep. All
right?
day.
And it's just
Yep.
like, ah, we've all had those moments. Even I have, when I have to remind myself how many times, I'm sure this happens to everybody. You're so frustrated, you get this or that, and then your pocket or something gets caught on the door. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
everything's after me,
So yeah. This too. Come on. Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
it's just
100%. Yeah.
we can change, you know, in an instinct, a moment we decide, you know what? Take a breath, take 3, 4 breaths, as long as you need, and then just switch. Just be like, okay, you know what? The rest of the day is it's gonna be great. It's gonna be better.
Right.
Right? We
Right.
can switch it, right? It's just being aware of what just happened,
Right.
taking control, owning all
Right.
that stuff that was happening in your head that led to something else. And that awareness turns to you just literally took control of a situation, and now you decided how you wanted the rest of your day to
Right.
go. And then if you follow through, you're going to be at the end of the night, you're going to be like, wow, that was a great day,
Right.
right? And then being grateful.
Right.
And it's yeah, it's incredible. That's why this journey is it's fun, because like you start to pick things, you start to
Right.
analyze yourself in a different way, where you're not judging yourself. You're more like, okay, I get it. I
Right.
see where this is coming. And
Right.
you start to see and have you start to have more compassion for yourself, right?
Yes.
Because there's reasons why we respond the way we respond. And it's but then it's realizing that we don't want whatever happened in the past or this or that
Right.
to control us, right? And then it's in letting go that things definitely change.
It's
So
true.
yeah, so I'm so happy for you too for this
Thanks.
journey. No,
Thank
it's
you.
incredible. It's
Yes.
you sharing even just briefly that you also have gone through your struggles in the past too, and just to be where you're at.
Right.
And even the name of your podcast, mental mobility, and it's exactly what we're even talking about, is that we have that capacity to move things and change things and choose what we download, choose
Right.
what we want, right?
Right.
And knowing that and being in that space where we can choose, um, it's just incredible. And I love seeing stories and hearing your story too, and coming out strong. And it's amazing. You're also inspiring a lot of people, and we're not alone. No
Right.
one is alone. And once you come out of that, you're going to start to see the right people are going to start showing up,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
It's cool. It's good.
yeah, no, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
S
congrats.
Thanks. Real quick, I have to go pick up my daughter from school
Yeah.
soon. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you right now, would you like to do part 2 and part 3 at any time of this podcast?
Absolutely.
All right,
I
perfect.
have so many stories to share. Especially, I love to see what the response
Right.
of those who are watching, and what they're also maybe curious about
Right.
learning, right? Because this is, for a lot of people, this is new.
Yeah.
And um and especially those who have been brought up through certain teachings, whether it's religion or this and that. And I get that a lot as well. Is like, man, like I hear what you're saying, but like what I've been taught, it's not.
Right.
We don't go there, right? But
Right.
it's like, I want to know, I want to learn. But it's like they feel bad, or there's guilt or this. So, and I've said this before, that if there's anything that makes you feel guilty, you know, feeling that there's this sense of judgment or this um the resentment, like all those things, like then it's a time to reflect and question like what it is that your beliefs, if they're leading you to feel that way, then it's okay. That's not the place that we wanna be, right? This in this space of spirituality, it is all love. There is no judgment. It is unconditional love, right? It's we are spiritual beings, and it's in accepting that and nurturing that. There is no judgment,
Right.
right? There's no anger. There's no fear. There's none of those things are there, right? And it's just such a great learning experience. So I really would love to know what people actually think, and I'm ready for the challenge too because I know I do get a lot of different questions, and yeah, I could talk about this stuff forever, and it's really through my experience. I Whatever I don't know, I
Right.
will definitely say I don't know, but it's just what I know. I could definitely talk
Absolutely.
on.
I
Yeah,
understand that. So that's great. I
yeah,
love the. I just want to say thank you. All right,
yeah.
before anything happens, but I appreciate you coming to the podcast and sharing the story. But next podcast, now we've covered a lot about your brother. We want to know, I think, more about what did you do to cope?
Mhm.
What did you do to get through that tough time? Because as hard it was for him, it was
Yeah.
a lot harder for you. But what were the things you did after? We talked about that
Oh.
shortly, but let's talk about that next time for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
All right,
It's
cool.
a whole new journey.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. Well,
All right.
thank you so much for
Oh,
coming out. I do appreciate it.